So I'm sure it's just a coincidence, but I don't know why there's no male faculty members at this workshop besides me. But we had a couple sign up, didn't we, Scott? That I won't say anything about what that means for planning and faculty development, professional development. I don't know what that means. And so cancel what I just said. We'll just stop that because we have somebody who's signing in right now who is who goes against what I just said. Hey, welcome. In 25 words or less, we just went around the room and introduced ourselves really quickly. Hey, thanks for coming. Okay, so that line of thinking, we just cancel that I was just going to start going on before. So I'm Tom Brinthaupt. I'm the Director of Faculty Development here in the center. I'm also a professor in the psychology department, and I've been here 26 years, something like that. Maybe 27. I just lost count. I don't go back and trace it out. Same thing with my age. Somebody asked me how old I was the other day. So I really don't know. When was I born? Let's see. It's like, so what we're going to do, first of all, any ideas on why I put these little images here on the front? Is that a rock and water? No. No, that's actually at the top of somebody's head. Can you see that? Are these just decorative, or actually are they thematic to what we're talking about today?
They don't look particularly optimistic.
Well, at least in my case, and especially for newer faculty, from what we have learned from the center and also from participants in the Faculty Fellows Program and your own experiences most likely, right? To me, the extent of my planning historically has been like these things. That's my point. Is, okay, what's the fire that needs to be put out? That's due right now, or somebody's like, demanding that I produce something or whatever it is. And that's the thing that my focus and all my attention gets to. Then, that's done. Now what am I going to do? And I'm like walking around. And the other thing is, actually, I wanted to have a head above water, but that was even better. It's just, how do I keep my head above water? Especially as a newer faculty member. But I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but as a mid-career or late career faculty member, it gets worse. Okay? I'm sorry, but it's true. It's even harder. So that's probably more like a mid-career or late career faculty member trying to keep you, depending on what you decide to do. Okay? So all that is a preamble to say, why would you need a faculty development plan? That is what I'm going to be talking about today. I wanted to put it in context. When I have something to do, and I presume when you have something to do, you set up a plan for that. This has to be done. I'm going to do that this week. I have 2 weeks to do this. I'm going to 1 hour here, 2 hours here. Right? I think that's our typical method of operation. For lots of people, that's the case. And if you think about it, that's, I don't want to be judgmental, but it may not be the most optimal way to be effective and efficient, but it's also something we're used to, and it's probably something we've been able to be successful at. That is very short-term, putting out fire planning, if you want to call that planning. I don't really call it planning. For me, it's like whatever the thing I have to work on right now. And I'm in that mode right now. I was in that mode at the end of February because I had like 3 things that were due at like March 1st. And so it's just like, it made me sick, literally made me sick. I didn't like that at all. Okay, so what I'm saying is that there's this kind of shorter term method of operation, MO, of the way that we typically probably operate to get things done. FDP, Faculty Development Plan, is not placed in that context. It's a broader, longer-term context. And so that's the essence of what the potential value is of this. Okay, so it's like, step back, what are you going to be doing this year, this coming year? Or what have you done this calendar year or this academic year? And some of us do that somewhat. Your departments might encourage that. They might ask you for a plan and what your goals are and things like that. But this is an effort to kind of formalize that. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Okay? Good enough? Putting out fires, keeping our head above water. This is more the long term, because if you have, what I would argue, and I think there's research to support this, in terms of goal planning and being better at time management and that kind of thing, if you have a longer term plan, it actually helps you in those shorter term putting out fires and day-to-day, week-to-week managing. I think that is true. So let's get started. What is an FDP? I'm going to call it that because FDP is 3 syllables. Faculty Development Plan is like, whatever, 10 syllables. So understand what I'm saying is an FDP. By the way, if you picked up an example template, that's great, but don't look at it yet. We're actually going to do a little activity on that. And there's nothing really on it that's going to help you in any way, or at least not until we get to that activity. So an FDP is, the key term here is long term. Okay, so it's more of a longish term, and typically for most people it's like a year long. Doesn't have to be that. It could be longer than that. I wouldn't recommend it shorter than that, like a semester. You could do that. I kind of do that in my own little planning. It's like, what am I going to do this semester? When am I going to get stuff done? But this is not that. It's more, what am I going to do this whole coming year, minimally? And some folks actually do more like a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan. And depending on your situation, that can make sense too. But I'm going to talk about it as like essentially as a 1 year, as the prototype. Okay, so what are you going to be doing the next year? And it's just a plan for, depending on your situation, optimizing the responsibilities that you have. So if you're a teaching faculty, okay, then all you really need to focus on, maybe, is the teaching part of it. And so what we have are actually different templates for that. We have a purely teaching FDP, which is essentially just the first page of the template and then some other stuff. And then we have the one that if you have teaching, research, and service and other responsibilities, that one. The more detailed, we call that the full version of an FDP. So you'll see this basic structure of it, and this is where it gets a little bit different from, at least my experience was, I was never that strategic or planful about how I got stuff done. It really was the putting out fires mentality for me. And I think that's pretty common from what we hear talking to people about it. I meet with frequently for the Fellows program. I discuss individual FDPs, and it's always very interesting to get that kind of feedback, but also to learn that the benefits of this. Most of the people that have done this as part of our program have never done it before. So that's telling me we don't really know, we don't really get much training or information about how we can be more strategic or planful about our professional development. That's why we have teaching and learning centers like this, supposedly. Okay, so it's to put it more structured. You'll see that there's just a set of specific steps that you could follow, and they involve these self-assessment. So we're going to ask you, I'll ask you, the template will ask you, how would you assess what your strengths are? We don't like to call them weaknesses, maybe your challenges, your opportunities, basically like a balanced perspective on your assessment of that domain, teaching, research, service, teaching, if teaching is your major responsibility. Okay, so you do that, but then there's a goal-setting component of it, and then there's also how you achieve the goals. So if you're like me, I can come up with lots of great goals, but I never really figure out how I can meet them, because that takes a lot of work and planning and that kind of thing. That's a great idea. Yeah, let's do that. And then it's just like, because we never actually put it into practice. So that's a crucial part of it, is determining how you actually can potentially achieve those goals. And then the last part of it is something that wouldn't impact you until you actually did one of these, and then at the end of the year you got feedback on it. And that is also a crucial part of the planning, because it completes the loop of what I would argue is there's value in other people knowing what your plans are. And you'll see what I mean by other people. It could be your department chair, it could be a mentor, it could be a peer or colleague, it could be a significant other for that matter. It could be somebody who knows that that's your plan. And so the outcome assessment at the end is crucial to that, where you basically say, well, guess what? I did everything on my plan from the previous year, or I didn't. So I'll give you some. This is kind of my example, but it's sort of a conglomeration of other people's experiences too. So it's kind of a mixture of that. But my approach has been, I have, when I would create a plan like this, 15 different things, let's say, for a year. Like literally 15 things. It's like, could I actually really get those things done? That doesn't bother me, actually. It doesn't bother me because if I have it in place and I have some kind of structure that I can work on and I get 8 or 10 of those things done, then at the end of the year I look back and say, oh, okay, I didn't get those 3 or 4 or 5 other things done, but I got 8 things done or 10 things done. And so there's some value to that. I don't think you should be hypercritical of yourself when you set goals and then you don't make them. You don't meet those goals. As long as you have reasonable goals and you're able to work towards those. In my case and other people's cases, sometimes we set more goals than we actually know in the back of our minds. There's no way in heck we're going to get those done. But we still set them. And maybe in a few cases, sometimes we will actually get those. Okay? So all that is kind of placing the context of what is an FDP and why might you want to use one and how might you use one. So this is a little misleading title because it's not really necessary. No one's forcing you to do it, although it is a requirement for the Faculty Fellows program. So for that, if you're in the Faculty Fellows, we are asking you to do that. But why is it necessary? Why would it be necessary? And here I want to talk about how do you know what you're supposed to be doing? Okay, whether teaching is your primary responsibility or you're teaching research and service and who knows what other else stuff that you have to do. How do you know that? Where do you get that from? And I think the evidence is fairly clear that what you should be doing, the expectations of your college, your dean, your department, your chair, the people on your promotion and tenure or your rehiring committees, whatever they might be, their expectations are sometimes not clear or not obvious. Or they purposely sometimes keep them from you to see if you can figure them out. What? What kind of... Wait, this is higher education, isn't it? So oftentimes our expectations are vague and unclear. They are also sometimes difficult to articulate. Well, we told you what you needed to do. Yeah, but it didn't make sense to me, what you said. I could never really figure out, potentially. And you'll see that one of the themes that underlies an FDP is to share it with somebody else who's in the know. Somebody that can actually evaluate it and say, that sounds like, yes, you should be doing that. This is where maybe a chair or a mentor or somebody like that would be very useful. Or that sounds like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. Why would you be putting all your eggs in this basket or all your time on this? Nobody's going to think that that counts for much in our department. That's like really important stuff to know. And it's not typically stuff, I would argue, that people are like forthcoming with. They're like going to tell you, hey, what are you doing? Yeah, no, you really shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing this. Oh, thanks. That's really helpful. Sometimes the expectations are articulated clearly. You know what they are, but you can't put them into practice. Say, for example, you're teaching 4 or 5 classes, or you're doing other things that are preventing you from, if you have research responsibilities, from doing your research or your writing, right? And that's a challenge too. Even if things are clear, I'm saying, sometimes it's difficult to actually do what's necessary to meet those expectations. Yeah? Okay, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but if not, let me know. Ever had this happen to you? It's like, they told me this, but then somebody else is telling me this. It's like, what am I supposed to do? And I can't get an answer to that. I've noticed with some faculty, there's never a resolution to this. It's like, I have 2 different entities or groups that are telling me, or people telling me I should do this and this, and they both say that's the thing I should be doing. But they actually work against each other. You should be devoting more time to your teaching. No, you should be devoting more time to your research or your writing. Which is it? Both. It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So this is kind of like oftentimes this is the situation you're in especially if you're in a tenure track position or if you've successfully gone through a tenure track position. These things are still sometimes vague or contradictory. And guess what? Even if you are successful and you figure things out and you're able to, boy, I'm really right on target, I'm getting everything done, and the wind blows or something changes, and then they do change. They're altered over time. And in the time frame of a tenure track position, for example, it might not feel like it, but 5 or 6 years is a pretty long time in terms of the opportunity for things to change. University-wide, for example, our criteria of promotion and tenure and rehiring and things like that shift. And so all of this to say, I would argue, all of this is to say the value of an FTP helps you somewhat to immunize yourself from this state of affairs. So that would be, to me, this is like a really good reason to do an FTP. There are other good reasons too, but the expectations angle is like a crucial one. Okay? You with me? Any questions or comments so far? Oh yes, we will. And we'll send this, and we'll also send the template that is the paper version, and so you can work with that. Anything else? Did I miss anything about expectations for success? Is that pretty much get your situation or all the possible options for you? I guess you could also say, no, my expectations are like really crystal clear, and they were explained to me at the beginning, and I've never had any trouble with that. I don't think I've ever heard a faculty member say that, but it's possible that could happen. And if that is the case for you, lucky you. That means probably your department is on top of things, or your chair, or whoever is it that's giving you that good, accurate information. Okay, let's go on. So you're starting to see, I hope, or hear some of the possible benefits of an FTP, but let me articulate those or lay out some of those more specifically. Obviously, it is a longer-term time management and effort management situation. And to me, it's not the shorter term, because what I do this week or this weekend or today, that's a different issue for me, and that's not what we're talking about here. This is a combination of that will help me and keep me kind of straight in terms of what are the things in my longer-term plan that I'm really trying to do. So it does help with time management and effort management, but not really that helpful for the things that you have to do today or this week or this weekend. That's a different issue. And we actually have given workshops in the past on time management and effort management and how you can better achieve that. But that's not really the ultimate purpose or the main purpose of an FTP. Another reason or benefit is you'll see that the underlying premise is, what are your goals that are realistic? Can you actually reach them? And can you work towards them? If you lay those out in a longer term framework, then I would argue that it increases your chances of success. You're not necessarily required to do it in your departments. There may be an expectation or encouragement to do that. But to me, it's like, this is like a really good reason to do an FTP, because if that can increase my chances of success, okay, I'll try it at least and see if it works. If you're on a tenure track route, around about the third year period, there's an official review called the third year review. And it's at that time where people sometimes get these unpleasant surprises. I thought everything you told me, I was fine. Everything I was doing was, in my previous annual review, everybody said, look, I got it right here. No, we think you should be doing more of this or that. And so you want to avoid, obviously, those unpleasant surprises at the third year or at any time. And this is one way to do that, especially if you have in the loop built in feedback from the people that are telling you this stuff. Chair, mentor, promotion and tenure committee people. Okay, so that's also a good reason. Even if you're past promotion and tenure, you're comfortable, you can never be fired unless you break the law or whatever the kinds of things we can do to get fired once we have tenure. Even in that case, it's not that you're going to have unpleasant surprises, but it can help you to be more strategic and more planful. So I would argue that it's applicable to any stage of one's career. I'm not going to say you should do this every year, because I don't know, it's great if you can, but depending on your situation and your short-termish, middle-termish goals and where you have to be in 2 years or 3 years or whatever, then I might do it for 2 or 3 years. Somebody in my position, I might do it every 5 years or something. In my case, I already have like an implicit faculty development plan. I don't actually use the template, even though I talk about it all the time and have developed it and have used it before, but I put in basically the practices of that. And so you wouldn't have to do it all the time or regularly, but what I'm saying is do it at least once or twice strategically and see if it helps. And that's one of the approaches actually to people that talk about FTPs. This is where, broadly speaking, what are your goals for professional development, personal development? And this can help with that. So these are things that if you do one of them, you can potentially benefit. We can't promise anything like that. Why is that? Why can't I just stand up here and say, if you do an FTP, you will get promoted and tenured, or you'll get hired in a tenure-track job, or you get rehired, and everybody will love you. Why can't I say that? It'd be nice if I could. I just did, but why is me saying that really not true?
Different in different contexts. What the requirements are and what that looks like.
And it all presumes that you know what you're supposed to do and you're accurate in that perception, and that may not be the case.
I think it also depends on how well you're able to identify good mentors.
Yes.
If you're in a department where you either knew or you're not sure who would be a good mentor, I mean, it seems like that's a critical part of
It is.
Of the accurate feedback part.
I would agree.
You
And
don't know who to talk to.
yes, and that's a general.
You're little, vulnerable, like this.
Well,
it's to someone who's like,
it's your life, it's your career you're entrusting with somebody. And yeah, that's a general issue that we have, I think, safe to say, across the university, mentoring problems, and there's been some push by the provost and others to change that situation, and it's just like we're not making very much progress on that. Yeah.
I think this is probably not the tenure and promotion guidelines. This is your own plan to develop faculty.
Yes.
So,
good point.
At every level, the expectation might be different. Your department might be happy with you with all the activities that you're doing, but maybe the college committee may not be happy.
That is true.
Because they're comparing it with some other department.
And maybe I'm not going to be happy with what I'm doing. Beyond what the requirements are, I would look at it that way. I think that's a really good point. I would look at it as like, am I happy doing this? Because I know faculty that have jumped through all the hoops and done everything they're supposed to do, and they've, got to the top of the mountain. And there's like, this is it. Now what am I going to do? This sucks, or whatever. And that's a possibility. And so I think you're right that this can also be, you talk about things, you set goals for yourself that are separate from, or really not maybe high priorities according to the standard, these are the things you have to do, promotion and tenure type stuff. And I would use it for that. In fact, that's what I would do in my position, is like, where am I, and how's my progress, and should I be more productive or less productive in this domain or that domain? What should I do? So it really does depend on your situation. Okay? We good? Haven't scared you off yet? No. Good. Essential components. So this is basically the template I was referring to. I'll go over this quickly because we're going to do a little practice activity on this. I'm going to ask you to think about some of these things and give you about 10 minutes or so to do that in a second here. So the self-assessment is, how do you evaluate yourself in that domain, teaching, research, service. We also have a fourth domain, which is it doesn't fall under teaching research service. It's like a combination of those things, and there might be some of those kind of instances for you. But you evaluate yourself or assess yourself. You set those goals, and here is where you can go both short and long term. So this semester or this year, or it could be in 2 years, I want to have this done by. And that's fine. I mean, that's whatever is a reasonable time frame for the goals that have risen up in your priority list, however you got to that list, then, you know, as long as it's realistic and it makes sense to you, that's a good idea, I think. And then, like I said, the goal achievement plans, that's a crucial thing. What are you actually going to do when the rubber meets the road? How are you going to get this stuff done that you said? Because really, if you stop here, I've assessed myself and I've come up with some goals, I'm good. No, you're not. It really doesn't help you at all if you don't put it into practice. And then the last part I alluded to before is it also doesn't help you really that much unless you create that. I'm a psychologist by training, a social psychologist, and we talk about self-presentation and impression management, for example. There's lots of research on that, like the impression that you create and norms and social effects within groups and things like that. I think of all that as floating around. And so what we think about in psychology, social psychology, is take advantage of that. How can I actually take advantage of that situation for myself? And so how I would do that, or how I would recommend that you do that, is let other people know what your plans are. Whoever you're comfortable with and safe with about your plans. And because there's a little trick about that. Other people know that. Even if they completely forget what my plans were, they probably will too if I tell them. I think they still remember, and they might ask me. And so that's like a little nudge for me. And that's what I mean. I'm like tricking myself to think, but they know I was going to try to get this paper done by the end of this semester. I hope they don't ask me about it because I'm going to be embarrassed to say, I have not worked at all on that. Thank you. Right? So there's a little bit of that where you can actually take advantage of. And so that is what this part is, the outcome assessment, is here's where I ended up with, but that you also share it with somebody else who had seen what your plan was. Right? Okay, so more essentials. Here's a little bit about the goal-setting literature. And some of you probably have heard of this before. You might have heard of the SMART system, for example. If not, I have this to show you here. But I have my own system. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a really good acronym, and so it's not going to catch on. But it's basically like the SMART system. And it's, what kind of goals should you set for yourself? Realistic, reachable, relevant. Okay? So it's and concrete and quantifiable. So not so vague. It's like, yeah, it's sort of like I met that goal. No, you really want to be specific that way. And so the name of this approach is SECU. And that's just not. Here's the other one. It's called SMART. And you can find this. There's lots of online resources about specific, measurable, achievable, results-focused, and time-bound. And that makes a lot better kind of mnemonic device or memory device. SMART goals. But you can see we're saying the same thing, basically, in terms of your goals. So what I'm saying with this slide is, what are the goals you're setting for yourself? And why would you set those goals? And where'd they come from? And can you actually meet them, too? That's the kind of stuff and that's the kind of stuff that I would not typically think of. It's like, I have this thing that needs to be done, but I don't really think of it as specifically necessarily in goal-related terms. So I think there's some value in thinking that way, too. Okay, so what else? Here's an example, and I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I want you to have the time to do the practice and think about your own goals and use the template a little bit. But here's this one particular kind of goal. So multiple steps here in the next couple slides. What is your goal? Okay, so start thinking about a goal. Research, teaching, service, whatever. What would be one of the goals that you would create for yourself that is reachable, reasonable, relevant, those kinds of things. And make it as specific as possible. Okay, so my example is not to say, I want to publish more or I have to publish more. They're telling me I need to publish more. My third-year review said, you need to publish more. That's not very helpful to me. I want to publish in a particular journal, perhaps. There are some departments that actually say you need to publish in certain tier level journals in order for us to really give you credit for that. Or, more specifically, the example I'm going to use is, I want to write up and submit the blank paper or study. Okay, that's like very clear, very specific goal. How long is it going to take me? With the list of things that I'm doing, I don't know. I have to go and check and see, and how far along, and that's all detail stuff that you'd also have to figure out. But you get very specific here, and once you specified the goal, set a deadline. So for me is, yes, I am going to write up and submit the blank study by the end of June this year, 2017. Okay, we're just like, what's your goal and how specific can you be and how you're going to meet it. I haven't talked about like how I'm actually going to accomplish that, but that is something that you would do next, which is what's going to prevent me. So think about potential obstacles. Okay, this isn't in the template. This is stuff that comes out of the literature on effective goal setting. Okay, these kinds of steps. We didn't put that in the template, but it's the kind of thing you want to think about when you're setting your goals and trying to work towards them. So in the case of my example, it'd be like, do I have somebody who could be a collaborator or a mentor or somebody who can help me write that thing or whatever it is that's going to be an obstacle. Okay? Because if I can identify the obstacles, that on the surface at least might help me to better manage my time and effort to be able to overcome those obstacles. Okay? Continuing then, are there people, groups, organizations who are the opposite of obstacles? Whatever. What's the opposite of obstacles? Assets. Or assists. Yeah. And so this, to me, is because of my bias, my disciplinary bias of psychology, sometimes it's like personal variables and personality variables. And so some people I can work with very effectively and other people I can't work with very well. And so when you get to that level, you have to kind of figure out who can I work with well? Who do I like to work with if collaboration is going to benefit you? Okay, so not necessarily just in a collaborative sense, but can somebody be a reviewer of the thing that you're working on, the thing that you're writing? Would they be willing to do that? This is where you get into social dynamics again. I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. So I've reviewed something for you in the past, so I would be less hesitant to ask you, would you actually look at this? I do a lot of that. And it's always positive because we're helping each other. So to be able to create that kind of environment in your network, a social network or your collaborative network is a great assist or asset to have. Then list the benefits of achieving the goal. This one, again, bias, psychological, disciplinary bias, but in addition to the actual specific tangible stuff, like I did this, I got this, I whatevered, right, that you list in your outline of faculty data or your CV or your end-of-year report or whatever context it takes, I would also think about the less tangible things. It's like, I just have to jump through these hoops, I have to do these things, but it really felt good to get that done. I feel good about that. One of the little tricks, again, that I do with my collaborators is anytime we get something accepted, we say, let's go have lunch somewhere to celebrate. And we also do it when it actually comes out. So, the publication lag between acceptance and... So, that's another reason to... So, I build in a lot of the social part of that because it makes it more fun, it makes it more interesting, and it keeps us together as a team. I'm kind of going over into the collaborative idea, and you might or might not have that. If you don't, it's a little bit different. But I'm a big advocate of collaboration as much as you can because obviously you can see it could really help you. Even if you're not directly collaborating with somebody, they could still help you by giving you feedback or reviewing or what have you. Okay? So what else do we have? Be specific about if this is my goal, do I have the skills to be able to accomplish that goal? What are those? And in the case of that example, if I need to publish or I want to publish that particular study or write that particular article, where's the expertise, or could somebody else help me, or do I have to learn some new things? And so I think we do this already. If you told me you have something on your plate that you're trying to get done within the next 3 months, we've kind of done that internal calculus. But I don't think we've done it as systematically as what I'm talking about here. So that's the main thing I'm advocating. I'm not saying we're not planful, we're not strategic. I think we are. But if you alter the time frame perspective and maybe look at different time frames, there's potential benefit to that. That's another thing that the FTP does. Okay, and then finally, of course, your specific plan. And this is part of the template. What are you going to do to reach the goal that you've set for yourself? So in my case, it's like I need to review the literature, and I know that's going to take me at least a couple of hours. When am I going to do that? And now we're getting into the shorter term. This week, next week, when? End of the semester? I already have some of those judgments made. There are some things that were on my list for this semester that there's no way I'm going to get to. So now I'm optimistically saying, I can do that in the summer. And that's what I'll do. I'll try to get this done in the summer. And, you got the basic idea, right? Do you? Yes? Okay, because now we're going to do the practice activity. I hope you have the basic idea. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I'll start a timer. Use the template handout and just sketch out a draft. Very, very small detail. It doesn't have to be like writing a novel or anything like that, but enough to get started about a domain that you want, whether it's teaching, research, or service, or you could go across those. The clock starts now. Okay, I hate to have to do this, but it's been 10 minutes. No, it's actually only been 5 minutes. But we only have like 10 minutes left because I don't want to go over the hour. So I'm going to have to ask you to stop your line of thinking. But I would like to ask you, what did you find that was easy about this? Anything? What you just did? So
I didn't say it. I got real negative while I was in here. So I was trying to find a way to get positive, and it kept going, develop this, develop this, develop this. Okay, keep developing.
And that was both the assessment and the goals, the linkage of the goals to the more general assessment?
Mm-hmm. Let me give you a pearl out of everything you just said. I wish that I knew, but being green and absolutely new, I have no idea what and where I need to develop. I don't know what I don't know. So having all of those things that you know, I need to focus on this. This is where I can grow, would be really helpful.
That's a great point, and that's probably what I would say too, which is, boy, if you have a whole bunch of things to do, it's great because then you can pick out the ones that are the most important or whatever, and don't have to do all of them. But right, so that's okay. How about what was difficult about it? Did you find it easy or difficult generally to do this? And this is like 5 minutes, understand. The typical FTP sometimes takes 20 hours. I don't know. No, I have no idea how long it takes, but I'm just guessing. Was there something that was really hard?
I stalled at specific plans. Because I said, okay, these are the 4 papers that I want to work on, and these are in the pipeline. And if I spent 2 hours a day doing this, could I have this done? And I just started losing my mind.
Because actually putting all that into practice is a challenge.
Can I close my door and turn out my light? It's supposed to be my office. Right. Knock on the door anyway.
That's an option. You might want to run that by your, important others to see if that's okay.
And actually, in relation to that, I mean, I'm trying to setting goals before the semester or the year, not in this elaborate format. But the problem that I found before is there are so many fires that occur during the semester that you were not expecting.
Yes.
They're not very important things,
yes.
but they have to be done.
And they end up overwhelming the more important things.
Exactly.
in the long term, that's what hurts us. Yes.
So, yeah. So, and I don't know what is the answer to that. Like, is it
The answer is you still have to put out the small fires. You can't not do that, right? You do, but the answer is to find a balance where while you're putting out the smaller fires that you have to put out, you're also working on the other longer term, if possible. Sounds nice. How would you actually do that? You just comes with practice and experience and trying out different things.
or maybe building time is
Yep.
through those small fires? Like, right now, I have the same problem as you. I have a list of things that I want to do all of them. But then, almost like I feel like I set up myself to failure by having a lot of goals.
Okay.
Because of those small things that
Well,
I happen during the semester.
yes, and that gets back to what I was saying before about what I do is I have many more goals than I know. Over time, I've realized this, and I trick myself. No, this year I'm actually going to get all of them done. Every year I try to trick myself into that, and I never get them all done. But look at what I'm doing. I am being productive, and so that's one way to counter that. You're not getting everything done, but you're getting a lot done. And as long as the lot that you're getting done is what people say you should be doing, that's what you should be doing, right?
I can get really overwhelmed and stressed easily by thinking of all the things I have to do. And so I trick myself by saying, wait a minute, these are things you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
How great is it to have all these things that I want to do?
Oh.
Now, there's only 24 hours in a day. But if I start to think, no, this is something I want to write those 4 papers. I
Yes.
want to do that research.
Yeah.
And then every day, how much time can I
Yeah. It's not,
spare
well,
to do those things that I want to do?
I don't know if I'd call it a trick. It's just a change of perspective on how you look at your challenges or your responsibilities,
Do
right?
I want to do the midterm grade report? No. But it's part of my job, and I want to do my job.
And that's one of the little fires. Yeah, one of the little fires you have to put out, but it doesn't take that long. And
Right, so
yes.
okay, fine, I'll do that task, get it over with, and then turn my attention to all those things that I want to do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I do have two more slides, I think. So we should be good, because one of my goals for this workshop is not to run over an hour, and so I'm going to try to implement that goal. Here are possible sources of information. I'll put them all up here, and we'll go through this really quickly. But I've already talked about most of these. Right? So this is that social impression management, self-presentation component of the FDP that I would really push you for. If you keep it to yourself, it loses its effectiveness or power, I would argue. If other people know about it, especially department chair, and we've had good success in the faculty fellows, where often the fellows will go to their chair and say, does this sound like a good plan? And I've heard feedback saying, yes, that's great. It's exactly what I think you should be working on, to, no, you're doing way too much, or you should definitely not do that. And that's like great information. If you didn't already know that, this is very important. So you can use that you can use the FDP essentially as a way to get information that you typically aren't getting. And you can even say, I developed it. The LT and ITC has a faculty development plan form, and I did one of these, and I wondered if we could meet and talk about it. Blame us, right? If you need to, or if you want to. That's fine. Promotion and Tenure Committee, I think, is a really good option. And I always recommend that to fellows, because what the chair tells you isn't necessarily what the P&T committee tells you. And that's an example of the potential for contradictory expectations. That is just a fact. I think that's very often the case. Maybe not always the case. I put question mark by the dean because deans are very busy and they often don't have time to meet with individual faculty like us. But if you have a good relationship with your dean, that might be worthwhile. That would be the lowest priority, though. Like I said, that they're just not in. That's not their job really. So. But you could get a general sense, potentially. They do have to, end up deciding on hiring you or deciding whether you're going to get promoted or tenured or whatever. But there's all these other mechanisms that are in place that they typically rely on. But I would also go to people that have recently been tenured and promoted and find out what their experiences were and their history and how did they figure it out, because that would help to inform my FTP.
Just one suggestion. I would like to add department and college promotion criteria.
Yes.
If possible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I should change that. So, because, again, there's a potential difference, and it is. It's a different level of consideration. People outside of your discipline are evaluating you, and you want to know that. So, back, not only here, but also people that have been recently promoted and tenured within your college would be a great idea. It says, this sounds like work. It's like, I just want to do a plan. Here's my plan. I'm just going to sit on it, and then maybe I'll get it done. That's what I'm saying I wouldn't do. I would do the extra work to say, what do you think of this? Does this sound like a good plan to you? I've also had people who have shown me their plans, and it's like all this stuff. I mean, I want to do this. Literally like 15 things. It's like, seems like you're doing a lot of stuff. Can you actually, it looks to me like there's too much stuff that you're actually putting into your plan. And one response was, no, I'm already doing all those things. So, okay, good. Keep up the good work. High five. It's like, yeah, if you can do that, that's great. And still have a life, you know. That's great. And then, of course, we do that. For faculty fellows, those of you that are in that, I will meet with you individually and we'll talk about that. And that's always very, to me, it's fun. Strange idea, fun. Maybe not you would consider it fun, but it's interesting. And even if you're not in the fellows program, you can always, and I do that, I'll review people's FTPs even if they're not in the program. So have done that a lot. So I actually have a little script that I go through when I review an FTP. Maybe that would be interesting to include in the workshop, but we don't have time. One thing to notice about this, exclude maybe the dean, but certainly if you did all of those things other than the dean, different college committees and people that you think you're going to be pretty accurate in terms of you doing the things that you should be doing? Yes. This is a way, it's sort of like a backdoor way of getting the mentoring that you may not be getting currently, or supplementing the mentoring that you are getting. That's another way to think about this.
People know when you do that, the kinds of things that you will potentially be working on, because they may, if they're not on the tenure and promotion committee, but they're still talking with people that are and whatnot, but then it's like, oh, yeah, they've got these things going on, and instead of not knowing until the end of the year review, you're sort of putting feelers out that this is.
Do you mean that other people know what you're doing and that spreads out and the word gets out as an impression management tool or technique?
Your focus and your.
I agree.
You have this,
Not that you go out saying, hey, I'm working on another paper, everybody, and, because that could have counter, but it's more of the.
What is your thinking on this, feedback?
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a benefit of communicating within the powers that be that are making life or death decisions about you for your career. Yes. Okay, what's next? Last slide. So now, actually take the 20 hours or the hour or whatever it'll take you to do this. We will send you the digital version of that. We'll email that to you. So we have the list of the sign-ins, and if you don't want it, just delete it. But I'll also send a copy of the presentation to you if you want that. Come to us, like I said, if you want feedback, specific feedback, and do that social thing that I was stressing. You can pick whoever you want, whoever you're comfortable with. You might not be comfortable with the chair. Occasionally people are not. I really don't want to show this to my chair. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea because the chair is making decisions about your career. So you do want to be in their good graces and at least understand what they think you should be doing, right? But if it's between a chair and a mentor, I would maybe go with a mentor as well, because the mentor's job is to make sure that I have accuracy in what I'm doing, aligning with expectations in the department and college. Then, of course, finalize it, sign it. You'll notice in the very end, there's a signature page. And I've had faculty fellows, participants come in and say, I didn't get my chair to sign this. Do I need to do that? Up to you. It's not a requirement. It's just the little trick thing that we're saying is you're letting them see that after you've discussed it with them. That's the value of the signature, not that you actually have to get the signature. And then, of course, begin implementing it. The end is that you discuss what you ended up. I think that's the valuable thing. If you do this one time, do it completely like this, where you have shared it with your chair, your T&P committee, or mentor, and at the end of the year, revisit it with them. Because that could be very valuable. Boy, I was way overestimating what I could get done, or I actually was right on target, or I could have done more. Whatever the case may be. I think that's very valuable. Then what do? You, as they say in shampoo, you lather, rinse, and repeat. And you may have heard me tell this joke before, but when I was a little kid, I went through an entire bottle of shampoo because I was following the directions on that. Not really. What you want to do is revisit it when it's timely. I don't think you need to do this. I don't think any of us need to do this every year. I think you need to do it at least one time to get a good feel so that now you're more structured. And if you find it beneficial to do it each year, I would keep doing it. To me, it's more you're engaging in the practices and the behaviors that are necessary to increase your chances of success. That's really the function of the FTP. And we started like 5 minutes after the hour, so this is actually less than an hour. But we are finished, and I will still be here if we have any questions or comments, general kinds of things.
Is the evaluation something we need to fill out and deposit somewhere?
Yes, there's actually a form there. Yes, so if you would, take that seriously. If you have any ideas on if you could add that idea about the college committees too, because I'm going to actually go back and change it on the PowerPoint right now, so I'll remember that. Yeah. You mean you have other things to do, Nancy?
Other things you want to do.
I'm glad to see you. And are we going to lunch?
We are. We haven't decided, right? So, well, has it come out yet? It's been accepted, right? Nancy and I actually worked on paper, and it's been accepted. So that is, let's plan lunch.
Any advice for how you should think about failure? Like, do you go into it with a failure is impossible mentality, or do you say, okay, I probably am going to fail at parts of this?
I think kind of like from a psychological perspective, like a clinical psychology perspective, say, I think the more nuanced you are in the way that you look at both what's good and bad, the more accurate one is. So I do fail personally at certain things. I got nothing done with that. And sometimes over years, this is like this really interesting thing. Why is it just sitting there? Somebody's going to beat me to it if I don't eventually send this out or publish it. Failure, failure, failure. But I don't look at it as a failure. It's like, I didn't get that done, but I got this, and this done. And so I make a distinction. I avoid the global or globality, if that's a word, and a global assessment. You want to avoid that in an FTP. You don't want to have an FTP that has all these goals, none of which are realistically possible for me. Because in that case, I would feel like a failure. I got none of them done, or they were all just unrealistic. And so this is where you could kind of balance it. That is doable. There's something I could do that I could get done in a month's time. I'm going to put that in my list of things to do, and then I'm going to celebrate in my own little way, however that would be when I do get that done. That prevents me from those more global assessments of my success or failure, if that makes sense. Yes, we're hypercritical of ourselves and others as well.
I see that you're recording this session.
Yes.
Is it going to be available? Or is it just
It will be. Yeah, no, we're going to post it, and we have an archive of our recorded sessions, and That's what we do, and that's called a swivel, by the way. And you might notice as I move around, it was following me. It's kind of like a little robot thing. This is a mic, and so the audio is very good in our workshops because of that. We don't really hear the audience questions so well.
Yeah, I'm on the CBAS committee on teaching, and we had these workshops, 4 workshops last semester. And Nate Callender from Aerospace.
Nate is the one that turned us on to this. So, yep. So we have one. And it really helps the quality of our workshop recordings now, so it's a great tool.
I'm in the faculty fellow program as well.
Yes.
When is the deadline to submit the
End of April, mid-May, but as long as you need to get it done before fall semester starts is realistically what we do.
Are we going to have another general meeting? Or?
Typically not. We've thought about having kind of a social thing at the end, and it usually doesn't. It's not very well attended because for some reason at the end of the semester everybody's like really busy, so it's just not a good timing thing. So, yes. By the way, stress workshop next week. Did you see that? We're having a stress management workshop next week.